Hello, good evening, and a very warm welcome to iQuanta's YouTube channel. Now that we are done with the cat, we are going to be with you for all the other entrance exams. And today in that series, we have brought in this particular session, a workshop, a marathon, call it whatever you call it. We call it doing our best to help you to excel in the XAT exam. So apart from the practice, of course, considering that I am taking the first session of XAT on YouTube, if you happen to have any question, issue, concern, doubts with respect to XAT, please ask those things to me. Just hold on to the cat questions for a brief while though. So once again, those of you who are new here, I welcome you to the channel. Please make sure that you subscribe to it. And in case you do not know me, my name is Vikrant and I am your personal coach for all things related to communication skills, English, decision making in the case of XAT, and then of course a lot of stages that you're going to encounter later. So I play a key role in that journey as well. So got any questions for me? Harshad, how are you doing, man? Good to see you around. Who else? Akhil, fantastic. Hasib says new look. Nana, winters. Still the same jacket, man. Still the same shirt, but of course, things are getting a little cold, so I just put on a jacket. Huh? बीमार थोड़ी होना है यार, तुम्हारे ज़ैट तक तुम्हारे साथ रहना है या नहीं रहना है? Okay, so in this question, I am going to predominantly focus on the verbal and logical ability section of the paper. Towards the end, I have added two basic preliminary decision-making questions to force you, the tricky questions, they'll force you to think. And maybe in that process, if you happen to have any questions or doubts with respect to decision making, you can bring them over and we can go ahead and talk about them as well. So let's go ahead and start. Let's dive into our questions now. So before I do that, let me give a quick review of what XAT is about. So first up, do you know the paper pattern of the XAT exam? Are you aware of the paper pattern? You know what all you are going to get. Huh? So here is that paper pattern for you. So it's an exam that is divided into two sections, two parts. So let's not call them sections, let's call them parts in order to avoid the confusion. So part 1 and part 2. So part 1 is going to have 75 multiple choice questions and you will have 170 minutes for those. Pretty convenient, I would say, right? So part 1 is divided across 3 sections. Here are the number of questions. And the important thing is that there is no sectional time limit, which means that you can maximize your score by focusing on the section that you're strong at. Okay, so after that, you'll have part 2. Part 2 is GK. Now, your shortlist for the next stages, that shortlist does not depend on part 2, but once you do qualify for XLRI, then they are going to look at your scores of part 2 and they'll assign it some weightage subsequently, right? So that's a broad overview. And then if I talk about the differences, I mean, some of the differences are obvious here, right? There is no sectional time limit. So question selection, there is an entire section on decision making and all that. There are no non-MCQs / Theta questions. But apart from that, there are some things that I think I can talk about. So no sectional time limit. The marking scheme is +1 and -0.25. So in the CAT exam, there is a 1/3 penalty for getting a question wrong. Here it is just 1/4. So it, to that extent, encourages a bit more of guessing. There is no negative marking in part 2, but there is a penalty for leaving questions in part 1. You can leave 8 questions unattempted, no penalty, but after that they'll start deducting 0.1 marks and there are going to be 5 options per question. Purely in terms of the subject matter, you'll find some new things in the paper. So the verbal and logical reasoning section will have some grammar based questions. These are usually very conventional error identification questions. Here the examiner will give you 5 or 6 sentences going by the past pattern, though things can change, and they'll ask you to choose those sentences which are grammatically correct or incorrect. Depending on the directions, you'd have to go ahead and do the needful, but then You'd also have vocabulary based questions. For the last few years, the only vocab based question that we've been getting is fill in the blanks. Usually not an easy question. You'd find one or two of these here. Then within the comprehension part of the paper, they typically give you around 2 questions that are based on a poem instead of just a prose. Another new thing is some direct critical reasoning questions, which are mostly paragraph based. And then of course an entire section called decision making, plus an entire segment in part 2 called GK. Apart from that, if I talk a little more about English, then the reading comprehension bit that you get is quite conventional. But it is different from the CAT in terms of the length. So the passages are usually shorter, but the difficulty level is also usually higher. The options can be trickier, ambiguous, quite close. Apart from that, you can expect to come across parajumbles in the exam. And if you do see a parajumble, it is going to be a multiple choice question. And therefore, you can go ahead and rely on the elimination approach while solving it. Okay, so that's basically the key differences. Anything else? Or बताइए, what about the deduction of marks they do for leaving questions? So I have addressed that. Now a lot of people get affected by it यार. But सच बताऊं यार, अगर तुम्हें एक सवाल आता है तो करोगे, नहीं आता है तो छोड़ोगे. अब अगर तुम्हें सवाल नहीं आता और तुम इसलिए कर रहे हो कि यार 0.1 डिडक्ट हो जाएगा, तो रिस्क क्या ले रहे हो? अगर गलत हो गया तो 0.25 जाएंगे. If you get it wrong, you'd get minus 0.25. If you leave it, it is just minus 0.1. So yeah, do take a guess, but only when you feel that you have eliminated 3 of the options and you're left with just 2. And even there, you are already leaning towards a particular answer choice. If you're 50-50, my usual thing is that, we'd rather skip it. Okay? और क्या हो रहा है अभिषेक? एडमिन लाइक कर दिया, क्या हो रहा है? अच्छा, अरे मतलब ब्लैकमेल किया जा रहा है तुम्हें आज. ओके, ऑल राइट. तो ये हो गया अपना ZAT वर्सेस CAT. अब काम शुरू करें. सो हियर आर द डायरेक्शंस फॉर द फर्स्ट 6 क्वेश्चंस. So read the following questions and answer them based on the instructions provided with each question. So Navanil, absolutely yes. If you're unsure, please leave. और वैसे भी बहुत ज्यादा थोड़ी छोड़ोगे तुम, पता है मुझे तुम्हारा. हाँ, ओके. और क्या? हाँ, सम्यक, थैंक यू. चलिए, चले आगे. व्हाट टू डू विद डिसीजन मेकिंग? अनिकेत, हमारे सेशंस बैच ज्वाइन कर ले भाई, पढ़ा देंगे यार हम. Join our batches. But until then, do look at critical reasoning. That's a precursor for decision making. So make sure that you perform well there. Okay. So here you go. Question number 1. Choose the grammatically correct sentence as it says right above my head. There are 6 sentences. 3 of these are grammatically correct and one option gathers, collects all the 3, and that's going to be your answer. Go ahead and tell me. आदित्य कर आज इसी सेशन में कर रहे हैं प्रैक्टिस अपन साथ में. So I'll try and ensure that we go ahead and review some of those concepts today. But feel तो आ रही है आज, है ना? हल्की हल्की सर्दी, जैकेट, कॉफी. तुम्हारी जिंदगी तो इम्तिहानों ने ले रखी है, पर मुझे लग रहा है कि मैं तो आज थोड़ा रेलिश कर पा रहा हूं. अनिकेत, बिल्कुल करवा देंगे यार. तू अपना बच्चा है, तू चिंता मत कर. तुझे छोड़ा थोड़ी हुआ यार. Okay. So I have an answer from Shweta. भाई बाकी लोग. Sripad says the score versus percentile is changing drastically. Sripad, I mean, there are changes. Yes, they may appear drastic to between years, but that is a function of the difficulty level of the exam. So I am getting B versus E. Okay, so let's start. So food is a bigger problem than the virus for the poor. Absolutely okay. Let's look at second. In the past year and a half, starvation deaths have increased manifold. Ooh, a tiny little thing. It should be in the past year and a half. And now, when you have options, you should start getting to work, right? Second is incorrect, which means that any answer choice where there is second can be ruled out. Let's go. I have experienced life among the tribals in the Andaman Islands. Sounds okay. Fourth says sometime I get terrible headaches. यार मतलब रुलाएगा ना ये सवाल. ये सम टाइम नहीं होता ना, ये सम टाइम्स होता है ना. वो एस किधर गया? वेयर इज द एस? समटाइम्स इज राइट, सम टाइम इज रॉन्ग, which means that B goes, D goes. So we are left with C versus E. So let's check. Her parents are blind to her faults. Okay, uses an idiom, that's fine. Next one, I'm astonished over the number of people who follow him. Wrong preposition. It should be you're astonished at something. You may also use by, but definitely not over. So sixth is wrong, which means that option C also gets eliminated. So E is the best answer choice. So what did we learn? We learned that we learned three things from this question. Number one, we need to be, what should I say? Uh, we need to look at every sentence very minutely, very carefully. We need to be fastidious. So that's one. The second thing that you learned is that you need to revise articles. And the third thing that you learned is that, hey, you can get errors based on prepositions. So paying attention to the detail, mastering articles and prepositions, these are the three things that should have helped you. Rishabh, absolutely. Remember when I was talking, I also started with sometimes, and then I read it like this is sometime. It's not sometimes. What's happening? Okay. And moon, absolutely यार, वो मैंने इधर टांग रखा है भाई. करेक्ट. वामजी says सर स्नैप का भी करवाओगे? वामजी देख, ग्रामर तो दोनों में कॉमन ही है, बट I know that a lot of you are concerned about grammar. So from tomorrow onwards, I'm starting a series where I'll take you through a grammar review. So all the different things that get asked in grammar, we will sit down together for a little while, talk about the concept, solve a lot of questions from that area, and hopefully be able to revise. So I'm starting a series from tomorrow, grammar review. It should take at least 4 or 5 days. So do tune in every day. And after that, I will start a series on vocabulary for OMATs. So tune in for that as well. So I am sure I'll have you covered here. Okay. Like next one, question number 2 on your screen. And what are you supposed to do? Here it is. Once again, choose the grammatically correct sentences. श्वेता बिल्कुल होगा. एनमैट में ये जो मैं सीरीज कल से शुरू कर रहा हूँ ग्रामर की, उसके बाद वोकैब की, इट विल हेल्प यू फॉर ऑल द अदर एग्जाम्स विच आर कमिंग अप. And so they'll definitely be useful for SNAP, they'll be useful for NMAT. In case there is a particular area that you want us to focus more on, do let me know and I'll do that, yaar. Come on. असद, YouTube पे जो भी है सब फ्री है. Akhil, this time around don't miss out on it. 5. Sai, I'd be taking it at 5 PM tomorrow. So पूरी रिव्यू करेंगे कल से. रोज बैठेंगे 5 बजे हर रोज ग्रामर रिव्यू करेंगे, फिर वोकैब रिव्यू कर लेंगे, फिर प्रैक्टिस कर लेंगे, देखेंगे, चिंता मत करो. So answers, Hemant, Aditya, good to see that you are sharing the answers. Okay, so I've got an A, B, C, D. भाई कोई E भी गोद में ले लोगे तो मैं immediately discussion शुरू कर दूंगा फिर. Okay, so let's start. By the time Rohan returned, we had ordered starters. So that works. So this sentence is all right. There is nothing wrong here. When you use, so first is fine. Second, she's a class apart and always buys most unique stuff. Okay, now let's just highlight this part. Okay, when you say most unique, you realize unique is an adjective. When you say most unique, you are basically using superlative degree of an adjective. So what is your idea behind using comparatives and superlatives? When do we use them? The positive degree is the quality itself. When you compare two things for that quality, you're supposed to use the comparative degree, right? So it is created by adding er or more, those kind of things. And if you're comparing more than two things for that quality, you use superlative. Now, when I look at the adjective used here, the adjective is unique. Now, what does unique mean? Unique basically means one of its kind in the world. So something which is already one of its kind, can it actually have comparatives and superlatives? So you realize there are some adjectives that cannot have degrees of comparison. Unique is one example, but how about ideal, entire, extreme? Hey, perfect. Perfect means flawless, right? So there are some adjectives where you cannot have degrees of comparison. Unique is one of those. Logically, it won't make sense. So second is incorrect, which means that any option where you see 2 can be eliminated. Now, what is common between the other A versus D? 4 and 5. 1 we've already determined is correct. So you just need to check third. Less students attended the guest lecture this time. So less students. So you notice students is a countable noun. Less is not used with countable nouns. If you need an adjective with countable nouns, then what you use is fewer. So fewer students attended the guest lecture. So third is incorrect. D is also ruled out. So A is our answer. Fourth and fifth are correct. So we can skip those. Nani Aditya, you are a class apart. That's fine. Any other issue? Anyone? I know that some of you would have looked at fourth and marked it as error. Marked it as wrong. Why? Darshan, good for you. You may have marked it as error because you may looked at it as police and then have, that's wrong. But then you realize there are some nouns which are called mass nouns. And when it comes to mass nouns, they always take a plural verb. So fourth was correct. Police is a mass noun. Right? None, Mrunal. That's a different word altogether. She managed to cope is absolutely right. Cope up is different. So cope is a transitive verb. It means to overcome any difficulties that you've encountered. Coping up with is a double-edged error, you know. We use cope up with very often in informal style. So it should be able to cope with, not cope up with. If you use cope up, that's actually going to be incorrect. The right idiomatic expression is cope with. A lot of people do use cope up with, but that's informal. In the exam, we won't consider that right. Okay. When you say the starters, Aditya, not necessarily the, because are starters something unique to that particular restaurant? No. It's like we had ordered food. We won't use the there, right? Okay, now moving over to the next question. Question number 3, but do look at the directions. What are you being asked to do this time around? Anmol, I know it's a very frequently occurring issue. That's why I've talked about it, so that the next time around when you see this, you are confident in your answer. So this time around, you are looking for the sentences that are incorrect. So if a sentence is correct, it should not be there in your options. Which is another way of reminding you that, hey, in the exam, please read the directions carefully. Don't make such silly mistakes. Why is B colored differently? अरे मून आलस में करा नहीं होगा यार, वो कलर करना भूल गया मैं उसे. कर दूं? कलर करना भूल गया भाई. ये लो. There you go. अब तो डी भी थोड़ा डिफरेंट लग रहा है यार मुझे. उसे भी फिक्स कर देते हैं. चलो, सब सेम कलर. मून आई कैन अंडरस्टैंड. सर ऑड वन आउट का सवाल थोड़ी पूछा मैंने जो बी मार्क कर दोगे डिफरेंट कलर में है. और अगर होता भी तो तुमने नोटिस किया डी भी थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट कलर में था, फिर तो बी डी दोनों में कंफ्यूजन हो जाना था तुम्हें. चलिए तो शुरू किया जाए. तो देखिए इस पर्टिकुलर सवाल में सही जवाब है ए. द करेक्ट आंसर इज ऑप्शन ए. I see people have picked up B, C, D. Thank you, Agarwal with red flags. Okay, so let's check. The doctor recommended that the patient's skin sign the form. यही होगा आंसर क्या? नहीं, रुको, मैंने मेजॉरिटी पे चला गया. पढ़ना पड़ेगा यार. चेक करते हैं. चलो. Kirti claims that if she got an MBA after finishing her bachelor's degree, she might have been considered for the position. So this is a sentence that you call what? What do we call it? Conditional sentences. So might have been plus got. That's incorrect. So you either say if she had gotten, if she had got. So first is incorrect, which means first should be in our answer. Third, broadcast. The second third form is broadcasted. So that's incorrect. So third should also be in our answer. So 1 and 3. Then bacteria is the most common. Bacteria is. Dude, bacteria is plural. Bacterium is singular. Remember, there are some nouns that happen to have these different plural forms, these unconventional plural forms. So this should be R. It should be broadcast. It is high who needs support is right. Second is also right. In case anybody is confused about second, in case you're worried, then do let me know. I know some people can at times look at 2 and be like, yeah, I think it is slightly wrong. What's happening here? So in case you want to avoid that confusion about sentence 2, all that I'd recommend is that you go ahead and study something called subjunctive mood, and that will help you clear it up. Moon says, but we have agents. Hang on. Moon, you're absolutely right. We have agents, but this is a question of subject-verb agreement. The verb is supposed to agree with the subject. The subject is bacteria. So you look at the connection between these two. Where is agents coming into picture? Okay, fifth is absolutely correct. Second is absolutely correct. I यार अभी explain क्या करूं भाई? Subjunctive mood पढ़ ले यार. सब्जेक्टिव मूड पढ़ ले, हिंट दे देता हूँ. ओके, फॉर दोज ऑफ यू आर आस्किंग अबाउट सेकंड, you decent at math, right? You remember number system when we start dividing? The very first level of division is numbers can be real or imaginary. What are imaginary numbers? Imaginary numbers are those numbers that cannot be represented on the number line. Similarly, when you talk about actions, you realize actions can be real or imaginary. Imaginary actions are those that have never occurred, and therefore you can never plot them on a timeline. So in order to show that the action is imaginary, we engage in certain fancy things. Those fancy things are covered under this topic called subjunctive mood. So go ahead and do read it. Fifth is absolutely correct. Nothing wrong here. If you have questions, you can probably ask. Okay. So first को अगर जानना है तो you need to basically study something called conditional sentences. You can study them after studying tenses. Okay, so which ones are incorrect? First is incorrect, third is incorrect, fourth is incorrect. So we need 1, 3 and 4 which are there in E. So that's our answer. मोनिक क्या हो गया? मी होगा इंस्टेड ऑफ आई? ना ना, सवाल ही नहीं उठता, सवाल ही नहीं उठता. ओके, मैं ना डिटेल बाद में बताऊंगा, तब तक शॉर्ट में बता देता हूं. अगर किसी भी सेंटेंस में इट इज, इट वॉज या इट विल बी है और उसके फौरन बाद एक प्रोनाउन है. सो इफ यू नोटिस अ सेंटेंस दैट हैज इट इज, इट वॉज, इट विल बी, and there is a pronoun immediately afterwards, immediately, if there is some other word in between, then you won't apply this. If there's a pronoun immediately afterwards, this pronoun will always be a subject. It is never going to be an object. Okay, Anupama says, what is the grammar that we need to study for that? Anupama, English grammar, sorry. Okay, question number 4. This time around the directions are right up top. Gurleen, we don't have a word called broadcasted. The second and third form of broadcast is also broadcast. Remember, what is the second and third form of put? Broadcast, broadcast, broadcast. A lot of YouTubers use broadcast. A lot of Indian YouTubers use this because they are not aware of it. Classes नहीं ली ना उन्होंने मेरी, ले लेते तो ऐसी गलतियां नहीं करते. चलो बताओ भाई, बाकी लोग फोर्थ के आंसर्स दो. दर्शन, मैंने क्या मिस कर दिया भाई, बताओ. You're laughing at something that I've missed out on. Akriti says, oh God, back to school grammar. With a different teacher now. मैं हूं यार अभी साथ में. और आज तो खैर जैट पे फोकस है, कल 5 बजे सेशन है, उस पर ग्रामर पे फोकस करेंगे. सो इफ ग्रामर वरीज यू, ट्यून इन फॉर दैट सेशन. पूरा ग्रामर रिव्यू करने वाले साथ में हम लोग. तो आज ना, आई एम नॉट एबल टू गेट इनटू अ लॉट ऑफ डिटेल्स ऑफ द टॉपिक टुडे, but I am sharing the topic from which that question was created, right? So that those of you who are curious, you can at least go ahead and read up on that topic in order to gain confidence. So the correct answer here, as most of you has figured out, is option D. Khushi, the series that I'm starting on grammar tomorrow and after that on vocabulary tomorrow will also be useful for CMAT. So this series is for all the other management entrance tests. So if you're writing SNAP, NMAT, CMAT, Maharashtra CET, पक्का से अटेंड करना, मिस मत करना. Now those of you who have chosen something other than D, this is a question created from a topic called misplaced modifiers. तो देखो, मॉडिफायर क्या होता है? मॉडिफायर इज बेसिकली एन एडजेक्टिव और एन एडवर्ब, राइट? So there are times, so basically the thing about adjectives, adverbs is that they modify the word or the segment that is close to them. Okay. Now if you look at A, The noun that, so this part coming out of the airport gates is describing a person, right? Uh, Now, who was coming out of the airport gates? The noun that you have right next to it is wallet. Mishras with an apostrophe s is not a noun, it is an adjective. It's called a possessive adjective, or you can call it the possessive case of a noun. The noun here is wallet. So, is it the noun which was walking out of the airport gates? No. So, who was walking out? That person is missing from the sentence. Dangling modifier. A suffers from an error called dangling modifier. B, misplaced modifier. C, as the wallet was being stolen, Misra was coming out of the airport gates. We're saying two events were happening simultaneously, but if you read all the 5 sentences, you'd realize that it was Mishra's wallet that was stolen. So C does not capture it, and that is why D becomes the best answer for you. Question number 5. Moon, now you are wiser. Now you will not make that mistake. और ये जो moon है भाई, this is the you identify as a boy or a girl, male or a female. राम लेंगे यार, सब लेंगे सेशंस, क्यों चिंता कर रहे हैं आप? लिया भी है, इनफैक्ट आई टुक एन एनमैट स्नैप मैराथन आई थिंक लास्ट वीक, लिया भी था. हाँ, बट शायद अपने बच्चों के लिए लिया था, यूट्यूब पे ना लिया हो, मगर चल तो रही है यार, बैचेस में तो चल रहा है काम. ओके, सो मून इज मयंक, नाउ आई नो. हिंदी में वैसे भी कंफ्यूजन रहती है ना, चंदा मामा भी हो सकता है और चंदा चांद सी महबूबा के लिए भी हो सकता है, तो पता नहीं चलता जेंडर. हाँ, सो आई डिड नॉट वांट टू मिस जेंडर यू, but now I know it. Now I'll keep it in mind. So guys, answers for question number 5. किधर है आंसर? So what you see here is something that is tested quite frequently in the XAT exam. So you know that there are these words that we call confusibles. I mean, that's confusibles is not exactly a standard word, but then there are times when two words are quite similar, and therefore we may make a mistake there. So wo wala. So for example here, one of the key things that you need to figure out is lose versus lose. So the first lose is the opposite of tight, and the second lose is the opposite of a win. So here, when you say a string feels loose, it should be LOOSE, and with that, we can eliminate B, D, and E. Okay. Similarly, you would lose, when you say you would lose a kite, it is going to be LOSE, right? And not LOOSE. So therefore the correct answer is option A. So I'm just highlighting that lose versus lose. That's one mistake that I see very frequently in the world around us. Now I hope you're not going to make it. Here, Aditya, on this channel. यहीं इधर ही मिलेंगे अपन कल. Okay, so next question. So here are the directions. Read them and then go ahead and answer it. श्वेता, ये जो लास्ट ईयर्स के जो क्वेश्चंस है ना, कुछ मेमोरी बेस्ड, गूगल करके देखना, दे आर फ्लोटिंग अराउंड. You can check those previous year questions when you have a couple of days before the exam. That's the best move possible. So memory based जो questions कहीं ना कहीं मिल जाएंगे. अब मैं वो अनएथिकल है, इलीगल है, एनमैट वाले अलाउ नहीं करते हैं, बट कहीं किसी ने किया है तो कर देना. Shrimi, what's gerund? Okay, so gerund is when you use a verb that has an ing at the end. So this verb plus ing, when it is used as a noun, you call it a gerund. Okay, so I hope that helps. So for example, when I say running is a good exercise, talking to me is a therapy. So here, talking to me is a gerund phrase being used as a noun, or being used as a subject. अनुपमा, वो तो मैंने बनाया ही नहीं. आदित्य, अपने एएलपी सर काम कर रहे हैं उस पर. हम भी करते रहेंगे साथ साथ, थोड़ा बहुत साथ साथ काम, बट अभी वो कर रहे हैं. सो लेट्स सी. So answers, just 4-5 answers so far. Okay, so first up, it can be a very confusing question, but if I see for a long time the reception, that's a noun, Darwinism is a noun, bedeviled is a verb, either or, when you use either with or, when you use either or, they are a conjunction. When you use only either without or, then it is a pronoun. So here, because there is a or added, so a conjunction ho jayega. Sixth is going to be a verb. No is an adverb. Distinct is mostly an adjective. Okay, so let's see. Probably we can eliminate. First is a noun, second is a noun, fourth is a conjunction, seventh is an adjective. No, seventh is an adverb, so A goes out. First is a gerund. No ing. So second a noun, yes. Fourth a conjunction, yes. Fifth is a noun, yes. Acha, I missed out on fifth. Fifth is a noun. Neologism is the practice of cooking up or creating new words. Seventh is an adjective. No, that's an adverb, so let's rule it out. Second is a noun. Fourth is an adverb. No, fourth is a conjunction. So that leaves you with E. So E is the right answer. So, I mean, it is a question that tests your understanding of foundational grammar. This is a question that you may get asked in XAT, but it is a question that is even more important for exams like the SNAP. तो स्नैप वगैरह पे फोकस करना है तो बिल्कुल सॉलिड फोकस करने का. ओके, सो दैट्स ग्रामर. ओके, हियर आर द डायरेक्शंस फॉर द नेक्स्ट फ्यू क्वेश्चंस. So what do we see? Each of these questions gives you a sentence with blanks. Choose the option that best fills the blanks and share as your answer in the comment box. So we know that in the XAT exam, we can get 1 to 2 fill in the blank questions. As a teacher of English, I at times have a tendency to address them by their technical name, and that is sentence close. And usually the questions that you get in the XAT exam, they will give you 3 or 4 blanks in that particular question. And they can play around confusibles, they can play around grammar, they can play around some really hardcore vocabulary by bringing in some rather obscure words. So be ready for anything when it comes to XAT. Okay? Fair enough? All right, so here is your question number 7. Go ahead, solve it. Once I see 10 answers on the screen, I'll start talking. As in, I'd start discussing the question. Talk to मैं कर ही रहा हूँ बहुत देर से. So as you can see, I am focusing on those things which are new in XAT first. Gradually, we'll expose you to the entire gamut, but we need to kind of put in more effort towards the new areas. So I'm bringing those into them. Best book. Akhil, there is no book that I'd actually term the best. I mean, whichever one you have is the best book. Yeah, go ahead and work on that. Agarwal says, sir, why is that VRC so confusing? Yes. Yeah, the difficulty level can be on the higher side. अब जो है सो है, क्या करें. मनीष, हाँ ये ना, मनीष, दैट्स अ वाइज थिंग. यू नोटिस वो जब मल्टीपल चॉइसेस होते हैं ना, तो हमेशा ऑप्शंस को यूज करो, एलिमिनेट करो, उससे आसान हो जाते हैं बहुत बार सवाल, तो उससे आंसर्स आने शुरू हो सकते हैं. सो आई सी 4 आंसर्स ऑन द स्क्रीन सो फार. वेयर आर मोर आंसर्स? हाँ मयंक, अगर इफ यू हैव रेनन मार्टिन देन यूज रेनन मार्टिन, व्हाई नॉट, दैट साउंड्स गुड. मैंने वही पढ़ी थी जब मैं स्कूल में था. तो okay, so traveling is my hobby. Today in the Himalayas, as I drag my feet through the dash, I cannot but think of the same time last year when I was negotiating the thick dash of the Ganges Delta. You remember Delta from your geography classes, right? The place where the river meets the ocean, there's this delta. So slush, sludge, sloshing. So let's start. Slush is basically a kind of snow or ice which is a little watered down. Then sludge. Sludge is soft, wet earth. And sloshing. Sloshed basically means to move. So if I have a liquid in a tumbler and I shake it, the liquid will slosh around, right? So considering that the action is taking place in the Himalayas, the best option for first blank will be what? Ice. The word closest to ice is slush. On a delta, you are likely to find soft, wet earth. So second blank sludge. And then when you talk about water, obviously sloshing. Okay, so the best answer here is going to be option A. So the problem is, if you put sludge in the first blank and slush in the second, which some of us have done when we picked up E, Ganges Delta won't have ice. So you can't put slush in the second blank for sure. And slosh is a verb, it is not a noun, so it can't go in the second blank either. First blank also needed a noun, so slosh once again was ruled out. So therefore A. So Shantanav stays near Sundarban Delta. Yeah, matlab flex kar le. Some people will try to make us jealous in life. Our job is to remain calm. Next question. हाँ Navani, try and eliminate. देखो, when you have multiple blanks in a sentence, it gives you a lot of opportunities to eliminate. So use the options, try the elimination strategy. Chances are that you'd get it right. Aditya, geography matlab delta hai to geography ka word, but it is a word that is supposed to be common knowledge. So sloshing. Srimi, it should be sloshing. अब वो फ्लैक्स शुरू हो गया. अखिल सेज आई स्टे नियर साइलेंट वैली. तुम्हें पता मैं कहाँ रहता हूँ? मैं दिल्ली एनसीआर में रहता हूँ. हम लोग हैं खतरों के खिलाड़ी और हमारा ऑफिस है गुरुग्राम में, हरियाणा. हाँ, पॉल्यूशन पता तुम्हें? हम जहरीले लोग हैं हम. दो चार बार तो यमराज आए थे लेने, चले गए वापस, बोले यार यहाँ मैं नहीं बच सकता. Okay, so words. Let's start. So I'll start with the meanings. Okay, a felon. I see the first word that I see is felon. Felon is a person who is guilty of a serious crime. So somebody who is guilty of a serious crime. Then the next word that I see is felicitate. When you felicitate somebody, in a way you praise that person or you approve of the actions of that person. Then the next is freckles. Uh, you've seen that there are some people who are pale skinned, white, yellow people. They at times have a small pale brown spot on their skin, usually on the face. That small pale brown spot is called a freckle. The plural is freckles. So they'll have a lot of such spots on their entire face. So freckles are those spots on the face, on the skin. Then you have febrile. Febrile can mean somebody who is extremely active. Febrile can also mean somebody who is too excited or imaginative. And febrile can also mean somebody who is affected by fever. There are times when you have a lot of, when you're running a high temperature, so that kinds. Then another word that I see in option B is feral. Feral is a wild animal, or an animal living in the wild, particularly an animal that used to be a pet at some point of time. Then you have facilitate. When you facilitate, you help. Okay. Then you have feckless. Feckless is somebody who lacks determination, somebody who is weak in character. And then the last word that we are left with is felicific. Felicific is anything that causes happiness. Now that I've shared the meanings of a lot of these words with you, I hope I've covered all. Go ahead and now try it again. So if after the knowledge of vocabulary, if you're able to answer it, then you know that the problem was vocabulary. If you cannot do it still, then it's a different story. Fir wo logic wali gadbad hai. Answer. Now that you know the words, tell me. Despite being perceived as dash by all, the club members decided to. So this is a clue, okay, as the member of the year. So it has to be, I'd say, felicitate in second blank. So that leaves me with A, D, and E. And despite shows contrast, so I need a negative word for first blank. So felon will work. Can feral will work? Feral, a wild animal. He's part of the club, so feral, no, should not work. But second blank requires, so facilitate can be eliminated, felicitate. So in the first blank, federate. Federate is, okay, I did not share the meaning of federate with you, but federate is to make a federation. Okay, so they say India is a federation. So federate is to join together to form a federation. Won't make any sense. Febrile, maybe. So in the first blank, you can put in felon, you can put in febrile, feckless, maybe. Okay, so we're just picking up negative words, right? So let's retain them. Second blank, so we have already ruled out B and D, B and C on the basis of facilitate. Then last blank, let's focus on that, so that the whole affair would be dash to Arun's father who was recuperating after a serious illness. So felicific. In the last blank, you need felicific. You can't put in feral or febrile. So option B is already ruled out, so that leaves you with E. So the best answer is E. So the correct answer here is B. In the first blank, you can put in felon, you can put in febrile, you can put in feckless. But any negative word would have worked, right? But last, definitely only felicific. So that leaves you with B and E. And in B, Facilitate is wrong, so that gets ruled out. So, everything else is fine. Freckles won't fit in D. It will. If he has prominent freckles, it means that he has those prominent spots on his skin, on his face. So it can go absolutely. Right? So that's question number 8. Here is the next one. Navonil, any negative word would have worked in the first blank. 3 negative the apne paas. Felon was great, but then febrile would not have worked in the last blank. Felicitate would not have worked in the second blank. So those two did not fit. मनदीप वो सबकॉन्शियसली थोड़ी तो पता थी वोकैबुलरी, तभी हुआ होगा यार, ऐसे थोड़ी हो गया होगा. नहीं ऋषभ, वो डिस्पाइट अगर है तो फेलन चल जाएगा, ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं चलेगा. डिस्पाइट अलाउज फॉर दैट. Darshan, just read the sentence, try and see if you can eliminate and arrive at the answer. For example, the previous question had a lot of challenging words, so we definitely put it under the category of difficult, but here the words are not that challenging and maybe you can eliminate and arrive at the right answer. So try it. So if I look at just the first blank, you realize we are saying that the plant, so you can put in rots, you can put in decompose. In both of these situations, it will sort of act as a fertilizer. Plant will not disintegrate. Disintegrate is when you kind of all the different parts become separate. Corrode is used for things like metals and at times morality. So you won't use it for plants. Any plant that grows and decays in the soil. Can I use decays? Maybe. So let's keep it under suspense. So A and B are ruled out. Now let's focus on the second blank. So any plant that grows and decays, rots, decomposes in the soil adds to the productive power of the land if lime is present. But plants differ in value as makers of humus. There are only 10 essential ingredients of plant food. And the soil contains only 4. 10 essential constituents of plant food. 10 essential elements of plant food. So what do you want? And the soil contains only 4 that pertain us. That's grammatically incorrect. So C is ruled out. That concern us, that affect us. So answer has to be D versus E. We have brought it down to here. Which one would you choose? So second blank, what do you think? What is better? 10 essential constituents of plant food, 10 essential elements. So plant food is going to be made up of certain things. So we'd prefer constituents over elements, and therefore D over E. I think in the last blank, concern and affect both could go, but constituents over elements. When something is made up of some other things, then you use the term constituents and not elements, and therefore D over E. Okay. And here comes the last one, which is based on grammar. सो अब तक तो वोकैबुलरी था, अब देखें तुम्हारी प्रेपोजिशंस की अंडरस्टैंडिंग कितनी अच्छी चल रही है. अग्रवाल, जस्ट चेक कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट्स वर्सेस एलिमेंट्स. डिक्शनरी में एग्जांपल्स देख लेना, वो अपने आप क्लियर हो जाएगा. आई डोंट थिंक इट्स गोइंग टू बी दैट चैलेंजिंग. Answers, guys, answers. How can affect go? How when things can affect you? Somebody's behavior can affect you, right? Something can affect you. Affect is just the verb form of effect. अरे कंसर्न नवनील, कंसर्न का हमेशा वरी करना नहीं होता है. If something concerns you, it means that it is something that is relevant for you or important for you, or is something that you need to pay attention to. Okay, so the correct answer here is A. These are the, so in and to are the correct prepositions for the first two blanks respectively, and the third blank requires a pronoun. In and to are not pronouns but prepositions, so they could have been ruled out. So there is much difficulty in getting to this place, and it is not possible to reach it without the grace of the Lord. So A it is. So now I have taken you through fill in the blanks as well after a bit of grammar, and then let's move over to the next one. 11 to 16, what are you supposed to do? Question होगा, instructions होंगे, कर देना solve. Okay, so here you go. Asadullah, most of the years no. That is usually, when it comes to VARC, the toughest exam among all. Usually. There are years when CAT can match it in its difficulty level, but normally we don't expect the verbal and logical reasoning section of the XAT to be easy. Quant is usually easier than the CAT. However, last year was an exception where XAT Quant was also quite challenging at par with the CAT, although as I said, normally it is easier. और डिसीजन मेकिंग तो हर बार ही परेशान करता है लोगों को. Mandeep, mostly no. The XAT RCs can be a little more challenging, and the passages are usually on the smaller side. But other than that, I think it does not really. I mean, in terms of preparation, there shouldn't be much of a difference. Yes, there are poems, so you do need to account for that. Moon says, I'm so confused between B, D, and E. Okay. Confusion ही confusion है, solution कुछ पता नहीं. Okay. So first up, look at the question type. The evidence that best resolves the above debate will be. So debate is, one person says astrology isn't great, the other says, yeah, it is better than your subject. So the other person basically says, no, it is fine. And what is the basis? Because the rate of prediction is better. So let's take an example. Okay. So there is an astrologer, right? And to honor mathematics and the people that we have loved and fallen out of love with, let's call that person X. So there is an astrologer X. He gets 100 out of 1000 predictions right. Okay, great. Then there is an economist. Ram is an economist, right? And an economist Y gets say 90 out of 100 predictions right. Now in this case, given this data point, who would be better at predictions? Very clearly economist. Why? Because 90% of his predictions are right, whereas for an astrologer only 10% of his predictions are right. So although in terms of the absolute numbers, an astrologer is ahead, but if I ask you, you'd very clearly say an economist is better at predicting, right? So therefore, only evaluating the number of predictions somebody got right will not do. When you compare, you need to keep the base the same, otherwise the comparison loses its value, and therefore it is always better to look at percentages, or maybe some other way in which you're keeping the base the same. Fair enough? So that thought process will bring you to option E. If you look at option C, it is exclusively a solution for checking only the economists and not the astrologers, and therefore it will not be effective. So D, the problem is number of predictions. The number won't work. The absolute number won't work. It has to be a percentage. Similarly, B has number, so you can rule it out. I think A, most of you have already ruled out. Okay. So nobody has mentioned this, so I'm skipping it. So the best answer for you is E. Get the drift? Next question. Rishabh, it's not that accuracy is better explained in percentage. It's just that whenever you want to compare two quantities, you need to keep the base the same. You know, the absolute numbers may not matter much in that comparison. So B and D had that problem where they were looking at absolute number, but my example 100 out of 1000 versus 90 out of 100, that very clearly shows that the absolute number may not tell you who's better at predicting. You need to keep the base the same. Percentage is just a fancy way of saying that we keep the base the same. Sankalp, GMAT versus XAT. I am leaning, both are challenging, okay, but I'm leaning a little more towards that because the difficulty level of both can be identical. GMAT is an adaptive test, so when you get a question right, the next one is difficult. You get that right, the next one is tougher still. So for a good student, you'd pretty soon reach challenging questions. But in XAT, the syllabus is wider. You know, XAT also requires you to go through grammar, go through things like para-jumbles, fill in the blanks, a bit of vocabulary as well. So you need to study more things. So it requires more effort as a result. I hope that helps. Okay, which of the four? So, you know, in all these paragraph based critical reasoning questions, we always start here. That's your first step. Which of the following statements would be the clearest conclusion given the information presented above? So, what is the information? Alcohol advertising plays an important role in whether teens will start drinking alcoholic beverages. there has been a ban against the advertising of alcohol in any land for 30 years, where drinking is at least as prevalent as it is in countries where there is no such ban. So, what is the conclusion that we are getting at? So, let's start. Let's check. A. I'm just looking at all the options that you guys have shared. A. The advertising of alcohol cannot be the single factor that explains the prevalence of drinking among teens. Okay, what else have you picked up? B, C. B, teens who drink or are starting to drink alcohol do not do so because of advertising. We don't know of this, right? This is something that is can't say. I mean, if I were to label it, A is true. It cannot be the single factor, because there is a city where there are no advertisements yet teens drink. So B on the other hand is can't say, because some of them can do so because of advertising. So it is not the only option. That's a different story. Okay, see, banning alcohol advertising does not cause a decrease in the consumption of alcohol. Can't say. Why can't say? Because C is talking about consumption of alcohol, whereas the paragraph gives you information about only the alcohol that is consumed by teenagers. What is the effect of advertising on the alcohol consumption on the rest of the groups? We don't know. So you notice when you go to C, you are very subtly going from specific to general. You are going from teens to the entire alcohol consumption. Okay, D. More teens drink when they are not exposed to alcohol advertising as opposed to when they are. Can't say. All we know is that even when a teen is not exposed to advertising, he can still drink. Whether more such teens drink, so we're basically saying that there are two groups, okay? There are teens that are, so there are 100 teens that are where who do not get to see the advertisements, and another 100 who got to see the advertisement. Which one of these groups will have a higher number of people drinking alcoholic beverages? Can you take that call on the basis of the information provided? You can't. So can't say. Let's look at E. Most teens who drank 30 years ago did not simply stop drinking when the ban on advertising alcohol was introduced. So isn't it beyond the scope of this argument? So they banned it 30 years. In these 30 years, there are still teens who are drinking, or at least as often as in places where there is no such ban. So the ones who were already drinking, when the ban was imposed, did they continue drinking? Did they stop drinking? We don't know. We have nothing to base our judgment on. So this is also can't say. So the only option which is true on the basis of the data provided in the paragraph, the only option that is true is option A, and that is why that should be the answer. Mandeep, first up, let us wait for the results. Okay, whatever scores and percentile correlations we are giving you, that's a guess. And even the best at times can get it wrong when they guess. So first and foremost, wait for the results. In case you are confused about what to do until then my suggestion is prepare for the upcoming exams. And if you are left with some time, focus on your college semester exams or the personal interview, the next rounds that would typically involve things like personal interviews. Focus on those things. When the results are out, we'll see what can be done. But personally, if I still have to take a call, I'd rather recommend that you write the exam again. Okay, next question. So once again, a reminder, this is the first thing that you study, that you read. Then you go to the paragraph. Then you come to the options. Okay, so that's the direction that you're supposed to follow. Kumar, because B was can't say, yaar. When you say teens who are drinking do not do so because of advertising, how do you know that? Maybe there are teens out there who started drinking because of advertising. So yes, advertising is not the only factor. There can be teens who can start drinking without advertising. But to say that teens drink because of advertising, we don't do not drink because of advertising. We do not know that. So I have given you reasons for every answer choice that you've shared with me. Every option which was shared in the chat, I have talked about it. Okay. So in case you missed out on that, when you watch this video again, you'll find the answer right there staring at you. और थोड़ी सी देर में इस सेगमेंट के बाद आने वाली है एक पोम. What we are doing right now is paragraph based critical reasoning, the kind that comes in the exam, in XAT. It also gets asked in the NMAT, at times even in the SNAP. So yeah, it's pretty relevant for all those exams. Chalo, I'll give you guys Mayank, that does gives you poetry, so हाँ बिल्कुल करेंगे अपन, poems भी करेंगे. Okay, so I have gotten A, C, D and E as my answers. Okay, so I will do two things. Okay, first I'll tell you about what an assumption is. So those of you who have not gone through the basics of critical reasoning, assumption is an unstated premise. Okay, so the right answer should be the one which brings in some new information that is necessary for the conclusion. So what is the conclusion here? What's the conclusion? Vitamin A protects against anemia in children. On what basis is the author saying it? Whatever is stated here, they are your premises. So first up, anything that is stated can be eliminated as your answer. Right? Number two, if after this, so now you know what an assumption is. Now number two, if you are confused between two answer choices in an assumption question, what I want you to do is use the negation test. So what is a negation test? Take the opposite of that answer choice that is bothering you. Take the opposite of that answer choice to be true and check for the impact on the argument. So if you've taken the opposite of that option and now you realize that the conclusion can no longer be arrived at, you are on to the right assumption. On the other hand, even after taking the opposite of the option, there is no impact on the argument, then you know that is not an assumption, because an assumption is a necessary piece of information. Okay, so let's start. So I got an A, C, D, E. So let's reframe, let's paraphrase the argument. The researcher concluded that vitamin A protects against anemia in children. So it's basically more of a cause and effect thing. Like he says, cause is high concentration of vitamin A in blood. The effect is tendency of anemia to go down. Now, to tell you the truth, this is a question, when I've solved a lot of these questions. This is a question which basically talks about two things that are occurring together. So what are the two things that are occurring together? Wherever there is high concentration of vitamin A, alongside it, what do you see? No anemia. So this thing is called a correlation. When two things happen together, it's just a correlation. Now, there are four possibilities here. The possibilities are high levels of vitamin A are the cause for no anemia. Another possibility is that when people do not have anemia, when people have anemia, it reduces their vitamin A. So no anemia means it's the anemia which is leading to the high levels, the other way around. Or the third relation is where both of them are just happening together. So I'm saying in 95% of such questions, I've seen that two things that are occurring together, right? Vitamin A and anemia, no anemia occurring together. They have the author has simply assumed that high levels of vitamin A are the cause, right? So the assumption here is high levels of vitamin A are the cause for no anemia, right? Another way of phrasing it is that anemia is not something that reduces your levels of vitamin A, which is stated in E. So I'm saying in quite a few of these questions, the reverse of cause effect should be eliminated, and therefore you have it there. Sorry, getting some sniffles suddenly, yaar. Man. Okay, so therefore E, if you look at a very high blood concentration of vitamin A protects against anemia more effectively than does an average concentration. So it's not about high versus average, it is about high versus low, right? So therefore A is ruled out. It goes beyond the scope of the argument. B, I think none of you have chosen B, but treatment of vitamin does not cure anemia. It's going to be once again irrelevant whether it causes or not, and later on whether it acts as a curative agent or not is beyond the scope. C, a child is protected against developing anemia by a lower concentration of vitamin in the blood. Baba, this contradicts the argument. Every assumption is supposed to provide support. C contradicts. You should have ruled it out straight away. D, children with high concentration of vitamin A in the blood cannot develop anemia. Now, if you look at option D, this may appeal to you, but then in reality, if you look at option D, it is just a restatement, rephrasing of the conclusion. This is just the conclusion stated using a different set of words. So the conclusion and option D are, in terms of the statement, they are the exact same thing. So obviously it cannot act as a premise, and therefore it gets ruled out. So I do suspect that a lot of us would probably pick up D. So D versus E, I understand. C, that's a costly mistake. A, easy to rule out, high versus average, whereas the argument required high versus low. So D versus E, I understand. ABC tells me that we need to work harder. Okay, next question, guys. Once again, a reminder, this is where you start in paragraph based CR. If you start with the paragraph, you'll end up wasting your time. Until you read the question stem, you wouldn't even know what to focus on. Right? So you'd have to reread the paragraph. So no point reading it first. थैंक यू समर्थ जुयाल. जैकेट से भी ज्यादा अच्छी चीज नीचे है यार. Navanil, yes, VARC in XAT is challenging. They don't even call it VARC, but verbal and logical reasoning. Shivam, the best thing that you can do is start working on grammar now. Start with the high frequency areas, okay? So go through pronouns, go through verbs, go through misplaced modifiers, subject verb agreement, articles. Go through these topics once. Prepositions also gets asked very often, but I'm not asking you to go through it because prepositions something that does not really have a lot of rules. So you can read the chapter, but it may not affect your accuracy levels all that much. But subject verb agreement, pronouns, tenses, conditional sentences, subjunctive mood, modifiers. These things will help you a lot in the exam. Normally थोड़ा बहुत ऊपर नीचे होता है, ज़्यादा नहीं होता है. So typically a couple of questions based on poems, a couple of passages that give you generally 6 to 8 questions, one or two fill in the blanks, one or two para jumbles, one or two paragraph based critical reasoning questions. Some figure of speech based questions can also make an appearance. शिवम, अपने बैचेस में कैट में भी क्रिटिकल रीजनिंग चाहिए होती है यार. इट्स अ प्रिकर्सर फॉर द आरसी. सो हाँ, मेरे अगर इफ यू वर्कड विद मी ऑन द कैट एग्जाम, यू हैव गॉन थ्रू दिस. Okay, so we are getting B, C, D, and E. So thankfully, none of you have picked up A. So that's rule it out. Now B, C, D, E are all conclusions. Notice all of these are conclusions. So what do we do in such a scenario? Which of these can be concluded? So the last sentence of the paragraph, focus on that. It tells us that the proportion of light atoms in the universe is increasing. Why? Because the heavy ones decay into the light ones, but the reverse process does not occur, and that this trend can be measured by extrapolation back into time. In the base of the present trends, you can figure out when it all began. So great. Now let's look at B. B says, therefore it is imperative. Imperative is necessary that scientists begin developing ways to reverse the trend. The trend is taking place at the level of a universe. How would they reverse it? Moreover, restore the proper balance. How do you know what the proper balance is or was? So they can't do that, and therefore B gets ruled out. I think another option that we can rule out is E. As a result, the fusion taking place inside stars has to produce enough atoms of the heavy elements to offset the decay. Where does the paragraph say that this decay is dangerous or harmful and that stars can't survive without it? So rule it out. So that leaves you with C and D. C says, consequently, it is possible to use a shifting ratio of light to heavy atoms to calculate the age of the universe. Yes, we can do that. D, therefore, there are now more light elements than heavy ones. How do you know that there are more light elements than the heavy ones? So the number of light atoms is increasing. But do you know the starting point? Maybe at the beginning, every single atom was heavy, and then gradually that decay meant that more and more atoms are becoming light. But has that transition occurred where the light ones have become more than the heavy ones? Can we conclude that on the basis of the paragraph? The ratio of lighter to heavier atoms is increasing. Yes, but has it? Can we, or in other words, can you conclude increasing? Yes, but can you conclude that it is greater than 1:1 now? We cannot, and therefore D gets ruled out. So if you look at it, B, D, and E were can't say. C is the only one which is true, and that is why C should be the answer. So the directions may say most logical continuation of this paragraph, but it's basically critical reasoning where you had to figure out the conclusion. Got it? Next. Okay, the last critical reasoning question. So focus. You know the first thing that you're supposed to go read, right? The question stem. Start there. Dev- Devansh, we do that through consistent regular practice. प्रैक्टिस करते रहो यार, सब हो जाएगा. ऐसे आएगा, बिल्कुल आएगा. हम्म. Ooh, Mayank, A versus D, man. I can see where the problem is coming from. So, two things. The first is for those who have not gone through the basics. So, this question asks us to weaken. How do we weaken? We weaken by questioning the premises or the assumptions. But in this case, we want to weaken the justification for the claim. Okay. So first up, let's figure out the argument. So let's start. The conclusion of the argument is that recent observations suggest that small Earth-like worlds form a very low percentage of the planets orbiting stars in the galaxy other than the Sun. What is the justification for the conclusion? Of over 200 planets that astronomers have detected around other stars, almost all are hundreds of times larger and heavier than the Earth and orbit stars much smaller than the Sun. We want to weaken. Okay. Now, not just weaken, you also notice that there is this word called most. What does most tell you? Most tells you that more than one answer choice can weaken. You're supposed to pick up the one which is the best. The answers that I have gotten so far are A and D. So let's focus on these two, starting with A. So A says there are millions of planets orbiting stars around which astronomers have not attempted to detect planet. So focus on around which, huh? The things around which astronomers have not attempted to detect planets are the stars that are mentioned earlier in the sentence. In other words, astronomers have not attempted to detect planets around certain stars. And around these stars are millions of planets. So at a glance, this seems to weaken the justification. You know, astronomers have only detected 200 planets, so perhaps these are not representative of the millions of other planets that are out there. Maybe a higher percentage of these not yet detected planets that they've not looked at are Earth-like. That will undermine the author's conclusion. But then, look at the author's conclusion. The conclusion is focused on the planets in our galaxy. You see that? In the galaxy. We are talking about our galaxy. A just tells us that we have not yet detected a bunch of planets out there somewhere in space. So if that somewhere is a if that somewhere is outside of our galaxy, then it will not weaken it much. On the other hand, if all these places that they're not looked at, so basically, just to simplify, it mentions these stars. These stars are in our galaxy or outside of our galaxy. If they are in our galaxy, then it will weaken. If these stars are outside of our galaxy, then it will not weaken. Why? Because the argument is confining itself to our galaxy. So it can weaken if we use this assumption in our galaxy. So does it weaken? Yes, but given this condition. Fair enough, because we don't know where these stars are. And the argument is restricting itself to our galaxy. Now let's look at D. the smaller a planet is relative to the star it orbits, the more difficult it is for astronomers to detect. Now, if this is true, then if I look at the passage, almost all of the 200 planets detected by astronomers are much heavier than the Earth and orbit much smaller stars. From this, the author concludes that a very low percentage of planets in the galaxy are small or Earth-like. But what if astronomers are going by D, if they're not good at detecting small or Earth-like planets in the first place, then the justification does not mean much. It's then if D is true, it shows that we are good at detecting one kind of planet and bad at detecting another. So in that case, the link between 200 detected planets and the conclusion would practically be destroyed. So D, if true, makes the justification worthless. A can make it worthless provided we assume that the stars are in our galaxy. So when I compare, D weakens it more, A weakens it less, and therefore between the two we should prefer D. So challenging question, not an easy one, because A and D both weakened, but A weakens it less because we had to use an assumption. Whereas if D is true and we need to take it as true as the question says, it basically destroys. It says that here you basing your conclusion on the fact that I could not see the planets around them. But we're saying you don't even know how to see planets when they're small. So there are planets out there, you could not detect them, and therefore you cannot say that there is a low percentage of the planets orbiting stars. Because the kind of planets that you're supposed to look for, you can't even look for them. You don't have that ability to detect them. So this destroys the entire argument better. And therefore D in this question. And here is this one last question type which is new. Now, have you heard of something called figures of speech? Or maybe your teacher in school called these literary devices? Whatever term was used, there are questions that are built around this. So here is a question which gives you 4 sentences, asks you to pick up the one which is a metaphor. In the XAT exam, you'll actually encounter 5 sentences. मैं थोड़ा आलस कर रहा हूँ, आपको 4 ही दे रहा हूँ, तो इस क्वेश्चन में इग्नोर कर देना. In XAT you'd also have E. You'll have one more sentence somewhere here. So go ahead, do it. So question number 16, what's your answer? Oh, Mayank, you're writing something that I missed out on. काफी time लग गया था discussion में, तो मैंने skip कर दिया. But I hope it helps. So let's see. Yes, Navonil, absolutely yes. Mayank, spot on. That's exactly what we have there. Yes. Metaphor, simile and what not में कुछ और 15-20 मेजर चीजें आती हैं. So Navonil, I mean, I don't even recall the last time around somebody dropped in transferred epithet. Man, you seem to be good at it, huh? But you guys are absolutely spot on. The correct answer is B, the capitalist a parasite. Remember metaphor when you compare two things, two unlike things? So इसी में है खाली. मतलब मेरे साथ तो घर में रोज मेटाफर होता है, तुम्हारे साथ पता नहीं होता है. तुमको पता, तुमको बोलते तुम्हारे पेरेंट्स, मेरे वाले बोलते हैं मेरे को, इनसे तू तो गधा है. दैट्स अ मेटाफर, राइट? बहुत सुनता हूँ मैं ये. So there you go. B it is. Okay. Next set. So for 17 and 18, there'll be a poem. Read it and then answer the questions that follow. So here is the poem. बता देना जब पढ़ लो तो. Uh, the good thing about poems is the number of words. You won't find very many of them, and therefore it's easier to read. As in less time consuming to read, I shouldn't say easier. बता देना पढ़ के क्या समझ आया. शुभ, whenever you join, it's always great. In fact, तेरे आने से पहले कुछ 20-25 लोग तो भूख के मारे छोड़ के चले गए लगता है. मयंक किसी प्लानट की, पता है पोइट्री में यही तो है. मतलब आपने देखा नहीं वो गुलजार साहब को कुछ भी बोल देते हैं वो. होता है ना पोम्स में ये सब कुछ. उन्होंने एक गाना लिखा था, उसमें था हमने देखी है उन आंखों की महकती खुशबू. आपने देखी है खुशबू. खुशबू आंखों से देखते हैं कि दूसरा कोई सेंस होता है. कुछ भी आता है यार. जयंत, you want me to take you through PYQs? How many of you want me to take you guys through PYQs? Just drop in a comment PYQ whenever you hear me say this, and we can start with PYQs then. कर लेंगे यार. PYQs में क्या है बोलो. I'm game. That's poetry for you, deodorizing their eyes. यही होता है यार पोएट्री में. क्या करे भाई. तो चलो, in order to, because some of you are facing that challenge, let's see. In the northern hemisphere, the hemisphere that you and I live in, April is classically associated with spring. And you notice spring is a season of joy, where new things come in, hope, optimism. But there's a poem by Eliot. This is classic topsy-turviness of Eliot, where he turns things on its head. April is cruel instead of being hopeful. How is it? How can April be cruel? It is spring with flowers and mild weather and optimism and love in the air. But then when you read this, you notice Eliot is giving us an insight into a mind that does not enjoy these things as one would expect. Look at this. Breeding lilacs out of the dead land, flowers blooming. You think breeding lilacs out of dead land. It is a very heavy, depressed way to describe the blooming of the flowers. So the poet sees the same things as everyone else, but there is no joy there. And then if you see mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. So a sense of loss and longing, of being rooted in the past, and spring reawakening memories of things that have passed, memories of things that have gone by. Now you see, by comparison, when you say winter kept us warm, and then forgetful snow, these things suggest a state of comfortable emotional hibernation. See, come to think of it. If you are out in winters, when your arm is numb, it's frozen, when it is numb, you don't feel it. But when the blood flows once again, and after that, when your skin thaws, when your body thaws, you notice that feeling of pins and needles come, suddenly you know about it. So it is not the numbness that hurts. It is the return of the blood flow. So similarly, it is not the winter keeps you warm, it's the emotional numbness. And therefore you don't feel hurt. It is the return of the feelings which the spring symbolizes. So I think if you know somebody who has dealt with long-term depression, or maybe if you've gone through a bout of depression in life, you can probably feel the connection to what Eliot is describing here. The poem does a fantastic job of leading into the rest of the poem, this paragraph. It's the beginning. which deals excruciatingly with depression and memory. So, in summary, April is the cruelest month because the life and color of spring throws one's depression into stark relief and forces painful memories to surface. In comparison, winter makes you numb, so that's the emotional numbness, and therefore you're happy. So that's the kind of subtext. That's the kind of thing that is underneath it that should take you towards the heart of the poem. Okay, so here you go. The first question. Let's just read it together. And normally, whenever you read a poem, I would always recommend that read it aloud. In the examination hall, of course, you cannot do it. But until the XAT exam, you are expected to read a poem or two every day. Whenever you read poetry, speak it out. When you speak it out, that rhythm also unlocks some of the meanings. So April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over. Now, these are the names of the places. With a shower of rain, we stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight. Another place, drank coffee and talked for an hour. And when we were children staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled and I was frightened. He said, Mari, Mari, hold on tight. And down we went in the mountains. There you feel free. So, here is your question number 17. Nikhil, that's the name of a place. You notice the capital H there. So that capital H, that capital S, these basically tell you that these are proper nouns. So you shouldn't really worry much about these. So go ahead. Give me the answer to 17th. Mayank, author feels nihilist. Is there an epiphany here? How do you know that the author is nihilist? Depressed, yes. Sad, yes. Nihilist? A nihilist is somebody who does not believe in the institutions of the human society. He believes that all the political institutions, all the religious institutions, all the social institutions, say like marriage, are worth nothing. How do we know that? So it's definitely not nihilist. And there is no epiphany either. So D can be ruled out. Sermonic discourse. A sermon is where you lecture people, where you tell them that, this happened and that is how you're supposed to live. There is no gyanbazi happening here. But if you look at it, when we were children, this has happened very clearly. A memory from the author's past. So this tilts it very clearly towards an autobiographical snippet. Burial services where somebody dies. So, I'm a Hindu. So in my religion, when somebody passes away, we cremate them. There are some religions where we bury the dead. Like Islam, like Christianity. There are some religions where you leave the body on a tower of silence and all. So is there somebody who's died here? And no such indication. Apocalyptic climax. Depression, yes, but climax. Are things coming to an end? No. So you can rule out B as well. So C it is. And here is the next question. Snippet is a tiny segment. So autobiographical snippet. I mean, if you were to write an autobiography, you'd write a lot of things. Snippet is a part of your life. ओ शटअप, वहाँ एक्सप्लेन करते टाइम बता दिया यार मैं, वैसे मैंने जैसे नीलिस्टिक थोड़ी देर पहले बता दिया था, बरियल सर्विस भी बता दिया, तो चलो अभी नेक्स्ट टाइम अराउंड थोड़ा ज़्यादा कर लेंगे। जहाँ नहीं आए पूछ लिया करना यार, कई बार मैं मिस कर जाता हूँ तो तुम पूछ लो, बता देंगे। हम्म। उह। So, dudes and dudettes, the first thing that you need to look at is what is an oxymoron? An oxymoron is a figure of speech in which two contradictory terms are used together for effect. Okay, for example, if I say deafening silence, if I say pretty ugly, if I say happily married, these are oxymorons. Okay, this happily married part is a joke, don't take it too seriously. But हाँ, तो opposites कहाँ पे हैं? No opposite in B, C, D or E. The only opposite that you see is winter and warm, and that is why the correct answer should be A, which I think most of you have gotten right. So that's absolutely spot on. Good job, guys. Very good job. हाँ Manish, relatively easy. Yes, true that. हाँ ऑक्सीमोरोनिक, टू ऑपोजिट्स बीइंग यूज्ड टुगेदर। और बताऊं, जैसे अपन ये नहीं बोलते हैं यार, दिस इज एन ओपन सीक्रेट, half of Delhi knows it, it's an open secret. So that's okay. हाँ और भी बहुत सारे हैं, जैसे इफ वी आस्क, थोड़ा सटल सोचना पड़ता है कई बार, जैसे इफ वी आस्क समबडी टू एक्ट नेचुरली, और इफ वी से गिव मी एन एग्जैक्ट एस्टिमेट, if you think closely you would notice that these are oxymoronic. See that? There are times when the contrast may not be a very obvious contrast, you may need to dig deeper. Okay, here is a bit of homework for you. I want you to figure out the difference between an oxymoron and a paradox. Okay, these people at times can be confused. Lucifer says, sir, can we prepare in a month for that? Yeah, Lucifer, sun, baat sun yaar. Can we or can't we is not even a question. You know it and I know it that over the course of next 30 days, we can put in 30 days worth of preparation. And we have more than 30 days actually. That is on what, 5th? So 5 days of January, 31 days of December, that's 36 days. And we have a couple of days of November, 38 days. So in 38 days, we can put in 38 days of effort. Please make sure that you make these 38 days count. Will they be enough? Will they be sufficient to get you a great percentile? I don't know it. You don't know it. All that we can do is wake up every day for the next 38 days, put in solid effort, and that's what counts. Okay? नहीं Mayank, paradox means two things cannot happen. ना देख ले एक बार, पढ़ ले. Go check it. Okay? Lucifer, I think we must have uploaded a video on how to prepare for that. तो चेक कर लेना, इसी चैनल पे मिल जाना चाहिए. इन केस देर इज नो वीडियो, आई विल मेक वन एंड I'll put up something with that strategy. Okay. Okay. So next segment. So once again, go through the question and answer. Here is the first one. ये कॉमा एक्स्ट्रा आ गया, रुको. Himani, in case you've been, chalo, Himani, let's just go through these questions and then let's pick it up, okay? Let's solve this question and then we'll talk. Lucifer, I know it'll help. I'm guessing that we must have uploaded some video. I made one that talked about cat versus XAT. That should be uploaded. We also have a batch that you can consider joining in case you've not joined it. And if there is no strategy video available, I will make one for VRC and upload it here. Huh? Okay, so I have a lot of answers. Everybody's leaning towards D. So this is a baby step into the world of decision making. We'll of course take dedicated sessions. Since I was covering a lot of new things, I thought, why not this? So absolutely yes, D it is. So I basically got A and D. Okay, so let's compare. A says call the in-laws for an explanation. Now hang on. First up, let us think. Okay. I'm okay. Somebody's also shared B. Okay, somebody's also picked up C. Bhai Sahab. Okay, let's check. Let's check. So let me ask you something first. There is a lady who has brought in a complaint. This complaint of the daughter-in-law is true or false? So she's stating the truth or she's lying? Tell me. Is she stating the truth? daughter-in-law है, in-laws के against बोल रही है, सच ही बोल रही होगी, ये तो bias नहीं हो जाएगा? So we don't know that. Okay. So that's one point. The other point is, what is your goal here? What is your objective here? What is it that you want to achieve? Our objective is that if, and I'm saying if the daughter-in-law is being harassed, then the harassment must stop. So we're clear about these 2 points, right? Now let's check A. Call the in-laws for an explanation. Now, there are 2 possibilities. The in-laws harass the daughter-in-law or they do not harass the daughter-in-law. There are 2 possibilities, right? Because we don't know whether she's stating the truth or not. If you engage in A, they either harass or they do not harass. In both the cases, if you call them over and ask them, what's happening here at your house? You harass her. What are they going to tell you? If they harass her, what will they tell you? They'll tell you that we do not harass. If they do not harass, what will they tell you? They'll tell you we do not harass. So you're going to get the exact same answer. So what did you gain by calling them over? They'll tell you we do not harass. Plus, in case they actually harass her and they are influential, now they know that there is a complaint lodged against them, or there is at least an attempt to lodge a complaint against them. This will make the daughter-in-law safer. Will it make it feel safe or unsafe? So if you opt for A, you've made the situation better or worse? भाई सोच, इसलिए A नहीं कर सकते. B does not help you move towards your objective. नहीं कर सकते. C, why? She's an adult. Why are you not taking her word? Ideally, you would want to figure out whether it is true or false and then help her, but then you may not be in the position to first and foremost investigate. So asking her to go to the police, of the options available, that's the best option. This may not be the absolute best option, but of the options that are made available to you, this is the best option. So D. Okay, here is the next one. Shut up and work. We are an administrative authority. Administrative authority can be of various types. Yeah, you can be a district collector. You can be a judge. Judge won't be an administrative authority, but you can be a district collector maybe. You can be probably head of some Mahila Ayog or something, but Mahila Ayogs are also mostly quasi judicial. So you may not necessarily be somebody who can investigate. The first step needed is a discrete investigation to figure out whether what she's saying is right or not. Everything else will then happen later, and police very clearly is the investigative authority, investigative body. Anji, what's your take? This is a tricky question. See, in a lot of decision making scenarios, all the options are right. You can choose any of those options and nobody will really truly fault you. So, in such situations, what do you do? So, how do you get that clarity to think of the best answer choice in such a scenario, in such a situation? Bhai Saab, now let's see. Abna, listen to me carefully. In every decision making question, whatever you do, you show certain qualities of yours, right? You demonstrate some qualities of yours too. Now, what is our objective here? If I am this person, my objective is to save myself. Now, alongside that, my boss did not inform me about the meeting. He's my boss. So, in a way, can I say that we are part of the same team? So, if you're part of the same team, you would also ideally care for your team members. So, if possible, you would want to save your boss as well. So, if I were to assign this is our primary objective and saving the boss is going to be our secondary objective. So, if I look at A, what happens if I go ahead and do A? I am able to satisfy my primary objective, but my secondary objective gets compromised. B, I will be able to save my primary objective, achieve my primary objective. There is a higher probability of achieving the secondary objective in B. Why? Because you're seeking an appointment, which means that you'll go there and you'll talk. When you write something, it becomes black and white. But when you talk, you are putting yourself in a higher probability of influencing that other person. So it can be, you can convert it into something which is less damaging for your boss. C, in C, your primary objective is compromised, your secondary objective is met. In D, you realize D is unethical. And I don't know what kind of person you are in your real life, but in the exam, if an option is unethical, please rule it out. And E, none of you have chosen, so I'm not picking it up. So you notice, in C, the primary objective is getting compromised. In A and B, primary objective is not getting compromised. So A and B are better than C. Let's rule it out. So between A and B, which one is better? Option B. So you'll pick it up. B दिखाता है कि you will accomplish your primary objective as well as being careful, or being not careful, but being in a position where you've got the back of your teammates, even if that person is your boss. Nikhil, it has happened to me once. I have also worked with an FMCG, ना वो मतलब साबुन तेल सिगरेट बेचते थे हम लोग, तो एक बार मैं भी झेल चुका हूँ ये. सो बहुत सटल सोचना पड़ता है जिसमें वो, I think I have a framework that I use where I think of the objectives and then blah blah blah, but then in some decision making section we can go ahead and talk about these things more. Okay, Manish, you are right, but then once again, think of this point that I started with. In the exam, you are trying to demonstrate certain qualities in you. If you choose B, that allows you to demonstrate the maximum number of qualities possible. And therefore, from the perspective of the exam, B is going to be your best answer. बाकी life में बहुत कुछ होता है, seriously क्यों लेना? Okay? नहीं मनीष, वो ITC नहीं यार, वो दूसरी कंपनी थी, और भी कंपनी है. So that's what I had brought for you today. And over the course of next 38 days, I want you to focus on what is important and let go of anything that can be termed not important, so that you can maximize the probability of your getting selected. So that's how I expect you to be spending the next 38 days. और बताओ, और भी कंपनीज हैं सिगरेट की, खाली ITC नहीं है. हाँ, और बताओ, anything else? So some of you were talking about preparation strategy. Yeah, you already know the different areas that I had asked, right? So go ahead and start working on them. I'll just check our channel in case strategy video is not there. I'll ensure that it is there within a couple of days. कोशिश करेंगे कल ही अपलोड कर दे. ठीक है? Is there any book for decision making? नहीं निखिल, किताब विताब छोड़ दे यार. There are books, but then those books are very technical. They may not help you immensely in the exams. So just stick to what we share with you in the classes. Okay? And I have you covered strategy. A lot of you wanted to talk about PYQs in the sessions. We'll do PYQs, and a reminder, we are meeting tomorrow at 5 to start our grammar review. So tune in at 5. ताकि ग्रामर पे आप और मैं साथ में काम कर पाए. ओके, सो लेट्स वर्क टुगेदर ऑन ग्रामर, एंड वंस वी आर डन विद ग्रामर रिव्यू, लेट्स प्रैक्टिस मोर ऑफ वोकैबुलरी एज वेल. दैट इज फॉर ऑल द एग्जाम्स इंक्लूडिंग NMAT and SNAP. It's important for that as well, so don't forget to tune in. And before you leave, hey, leave a like for the video, huh? Thanks a lot, guys. Until I see you tomorrow at 5, have a great evening. Stay safe, stay focused, stay in touch, and I'll catch you soon.